Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Pond, awards editor of TheWrap, and we're so happy to have you here for our 2021 Emmy Awards screening of David Byrne's American Utopia, with David Byrne and four of the key creative talents on the film. We're going to start by showing the trailer to the film, and then we'll go right into a conversation with our panelists. To the audience, please participate in the live chat, share your thoughts about the conversation, and let us know where you're watching from. And now, before I introduce our guests, here's the trailer to American Utopia.
What if we could eliminate everything from the stage except the stuff we care about the most? Without cables or wires, what would be left? Well, it would be us and you. And that's what the show is. Everybody's calling to my house. Everybody's calling to my house. I'm never gonna be alone. And I'm never gonna go back. As people, we're a work in progress. Who we are, it extends beyond ourselves to the connections between all of us.
Welcome back. It's my pleasure to introduce producer and star David Byrne, lighting designer Rob Sinclair, lighting director Brian Spett, music mixer Pete Keppler, and director of photography Ellen Kuras. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for just a terrific film. I saw it on opening night at the Toronto Film Festival last year, and I'm delighted that it's still around. I guess it's coming to theaters pretty soon, isn't it, David?
Yes. I just heard there's some little runs in some actual theaters. Knock on wood. Yeah, knock on wood that all happens, that we keep the Delta at bay, and that can happen.
Yeah. So I know this grew out of a concert tour after your American Utopia album, and there's this remarkable conceit, which is that all the musicians would be completely untethered and they would only play instruments that they can carry with them. So what was the thinking behind that? Why did you have that idea for a stage show?
I had done some shows before where obviously singers can be mobile, and guitarists, we've all seen guitarists leaping about the stage. And I worked a few years ago with St. Vincent, and we had a lot of brass players, and we had them all be mobile. So then it was kind of a natural thought about, well, can we do the whole thing? Can we really, take the big bite and kind of go for everybody? Which meant that dividing up the drum duties, instead of one drummer, you've got 6 players getting the sound all together, playing together, so you get the sound of a drum kit and percussion and all that. And well, it was a lot of pre-production to get that to work. But it really paid off. It means the stage can be cleared. It gives the show, in a way, a completely different meaning. It puts all the focus on us and not on pyrotechnics or projections or all kinds of other stuff, all of which are fine. But in this case, I thought, as I say in the show, what people really are the most interested in is other people. So let's take everything else away and give them other people to look at. And so that's what we did. And it also, by clearing the stage, gives us this kind of this blank canvas. We can move around everywhere and make shapes and formations and interact with one another, which adds another layer of meaning to the whole show. It's the songs get interpreted in the way we move and the way we're lit and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and then there came the opportunity to bring it to Broadway, and I realized this was going to be a kind of a little bit of a challenge. Broadway is not going to be up and dancing on the third song like a concert audience would, but that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity for me to kind of talk to them and for them to absorb what's going on and maybe add a little bit more of a narrative thread to the whole thing, which I did. And it actually, that paid off. People could see that there was kind of a beginning and a middle of an end. It was this character's journey through the thing, through life in a way. And so that it became, a real show, a real story show, as opposed to just a collection of songs.
Yeah, right. I heard it described, and maybe it was by you at one point, as a very simple idea but complicated to pull off, which I suppose is where the other people here come in. I mean, Pete, as a music mixer, does it complicate things when it's not one drum set, it's maybe half a dozen or more people playing different parts of a drum set at different places on the stage?
Surprisingly, no. It was. I thought that would be a challenge. I think it really speaks to the incredible talent, musicianship of the whole percussion team, that they are able to do it. And it's the challenge really lay more in the wireless part of it, and dealing with all kinds of technical issues, which I won't bore everyone with here. But it was that was far more the challenge than actually putting sort of the drum set together, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Right. Did the challenges change when? Because I know you did the tour beforehand, right? Did it
Yeah.
change moving to Broadway, and then were there other changes for the filming?
The issues that were a little bit more pronounced on Broadway was that the musicians were closer together. The vocalists and the musicians were closer together, especially the drums. So when you have someone singing into their vocal microphone and a lot of drums nearby, things can get a little bit more challenging because of all the sort of bleed from various louder instruments. But on the whole, the whole mix remained surprisly the same. And the filming really wasn't. We didn't have to adjust much for that, other than bringing a lot more hardware into the theater to do the actual filming and recording.
Mm-hmm. So, David, did you have to adjust the choreography for the smaller stage of Broadway?
Oh yes, a little bit. And as Pete was saying there, it was a smaller stage than what we were used to on tour. So there were times, say, where we had to be really aware of keeping the drummers a little bit distanced from the vocal mics, people who were singing. There were certain drums that were really loud and others that were not. So sometimes the ones that were really loud, we would say, no, careful how far forward you go, because it's going to overpower everything else, because you can hear the drums in the house. It's as opposed to, say, outdoor festivals and some of the concert halls and things like that. The reinforcement that Pete is doing is kind of it's more subtle in a Broadway house, I would say. You can hear acoustically what we're doing on stage more in a Broadway house than you can in some of the concert halls.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, Rob and Brian, let's talk about the lighting challenges of this. I mean, you've got a show that takes place in one setting. Everybody's dressed the same. Does that put the onus on lighting to give an extra layer of variety and drama there?
I think that our challenges were partly visibility and not knowing where anyone would be at any one time was my initial sort of worry about the show, which we solved with the tracking system that we use, which is a classic example of something that looks very simple but's unbelievably complicated behind the scenes. So David and all of the band have tracking beacons on their shoulders, and we can position any light to any of them at any time, which is it's an amazing piece of technology, and gave us a lot of opportunities. And other than that, it was really just being able to try and set the lighting back and make it entirely supportive of the action on stage, and also develop what we did through the show. So we start off very simple and very monochrome, very graphic, and we end up in a much more celebratory, colorful space by the end. But really not dragging it out, but really extending that and making it feel like the lighting follows the journey of the band and of David on stage.
Mhm.
I think it was Rob who suggested the gray suits. I'd already decided that we were going to do suits and we're all going to be dressed identically. But I asked Rob, what color do you want? And he said, oh, medium gray. And that would allow him to have us disappear when we went into the darkness. And he could still put enough light on us that we would pop when we came into kind of more light. And yeah, you can imagine if we were all wearing white suits, let's say, which could be a nice look, but he'd never managed to get us to really disappear then. No matter how much in darkness we went, you'd still see this ghosty presence. So medium gray it was.
So Brian, for you, were there particular challenges in your job as lighting director?
Well, a lot of what I did is I took the original show file that was kind of configured for the touring mode and brought it into more of a Broadway scenario, you know, with a structured cue list ready to be called for the stage manager and a lot of that stuff. But again, a lot of this is making the technology invisible for the show. And then when we came to the filming, we really did it in real time. We filmed this with just a couple passes of the show. So a lot of that was, you know, just working and looking at the monitor and just, you know, reacting in real time at the end. We didn't really have to make a ton of changes for the filming. There's definitely some subtle stuff that needed to be doing, some color stuff. And, you know, it was just a testimony to the good team that, you know, working in real time, we were able to capture this and basically the essence of the Broadway show for some cameras, you know, that have their own particular requirements technically.
Yeah. Well, Ellen, you did something really remarkable here, which is your cameras seem to be everywhere, but we never see them. So how did you do that?
Well, Spike Lee, who was the director, was very, very keen on being able to break the fourth wall. And that means that, you know, we wanted to have cameras go behind the scenes, which was unusual for a theater show because normally you're in the audience and you can't join in to feel as if you're part of what's going on stage. So we only did 2 real passes of the show. And so I had to choose, you know, when we were going to put the cameras behind. So I decided that for the first pass of the show that we were doing, which was in a live audience, everything was live because they had already sold the show. I had to decide where we were going to stick cameras so we couldn't block people's view, where we had to block out cameras so that, you know, we could get a lot of what was happening on stage for Cineum. And then I ended up putting a Steadicam on stage for a third pass for pickups. So I had cameras hidden behind that metal curtain. And because there was no room on the stage, it was a Broadway stage with virtually no backstage. And in the wings of the theater, all of the percussion instruments were lined up, and all of the performers had to come in and out. So I basically had to put them on movable heads, remote heads, that could be placed just off of the side and have the operators basically down the stairs. One operator was underneath the stage, just so that we could keep people out of the way. So everybody was working in a very tight choreography along with the choreography. So Annie B. Parsons did just an incredible job with the choreography. And in one particular camera that we wanted to do, which is in the center stage, upstage, center stage, that was exactly the trajectory of where all the musicians were going to be walking. So we had to figure out how we were going to put the camera in a box so we wouldn't see it, put it off to the back so that everybody could then adjust themselves accordingly. But, you know, everything was so precise in what they did. And through, you know, because the performers knew backwards and forwards, they knew all of these moves. I mean, it was astounding to watch, to see how much of the choreography they remembered, and they were in unison. I mean, you know, I kept on saying, you know, to Spike as we were watching the show, it's incredible. So we need to find, you know, and be able to capture all of those little points. So there were lots of cameras, but I'm glad that you didn't see any of them.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like you must know that show inside and out to shoot it the way you did, because I feel like just the little glimpses, the winks, the smiles that there's a camera there to catch from the different musicians. It just feels like somebody who knows exactly where to have the camera at any given moment.
Well, that was one of the things that we knew that we wanted to try and capture. So, Spike and I had talked about, the interrelationships that we would see when we saw the show together. We were constantly writing notes in the audience with a very bright light, and Spike was talking out loud, and all the people are going, shh, shh. And he'd look at them going like, hey, I'm working, So we were worried that David was going to hear us up in the balcony with because we were getting so excited about what we were seeing in the show. So that was something when I called the show on the days that we were doing it, I had my notes all listed, knowing exactly when somebody was going to look someone. So I was alerting the cameras on the headsets as we were going along. So.
Yeah. So David, why Spike Lee? Why did you bring him in for this?
Spike and I had crossed paths over many years for quite a long time. We'd never really worked together. I'd been in a couple of documentaries he'd done, but we never really worked together. And I thought he seemed like a natural for this show. It just seemed like he's going to get what it's about. He's shot live shows before, which not every director has done that, that's a special thing. And I just thought, let's try. So I happened to have his phone number in my phone, and I just texted him and said, we're doing a show. I'd like you to come and see our show. There's a chance that it could be filmed. And well, he came to see the show in Boston, and I guess he liked it.
He called me up like crazy. I think it was in the middle of the night. Ellen, I just saw the show. We have to do it. I was like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
And Spike understood about community. There's so much of the show is about a man's journey, but it's so much about community as well. And that was something that, he really wanted to bring together through all of the shooting of it, through the performances of it, try to bring that idea together and give what we did with the filming meaning, so that people could see what they were doing in the performance. And, every part of the show for me was so rich because, what Rob and Brian did, the lighting had so much meaning, what David was saying, how he moved, how everybody was moving on the stage. It was full of meaning, and we were able to identify with it as an audience member. So, and it came at a particular time in our history, in our nation's history, that so many people really needed to see that, wanted to see it. It gave them hope and gave them a way to see their own lives and see hope for the future.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of I was reviewing the text, the things that I say during the show the other day, to see like, well, let's see if I need to change any of that given everything that's happening. Some of the stuff, it's kind of surprising. Like in the very beginning, I say to the audience, thank you for leaving your homes. And of course, now that's like, wow, did he know this was going to happen? No, it was said as a kind of joke, just as a funny thing before, but then now it takes on a whole extra meaning.
Yeah. And we shot that right before the shutdown. We managed to shoot it in the weekend right before everything shut down. So can you imagine? We were so lucky that we were able to do it. We were supposed to do it that September or October of 2019, and we ended up pushing it to the very end until the show was almost closed. And thank God we did that, because then right after that, everybody did go home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Brian and Rob, did the presence of the cameras not change what you had done with the show itself, or were there adjustments made for those specific times when it was shot?
I think we adjusted, as Brian said, we did a lot of this on the fly as we were filming, but I think we probably adjusted almost every cue in the show, but the meaning hopefully was intact. We just had to adjust some levels for camera, and Ellen, I think, really understood what we were trying to do, and it was actually really interesting. She really challenged me about some of the cues that we'd written and some of the lighting moments, and trying to find the intent behind them, which was really interesting. And then we worked together to try and think of how that could be adjusted so that meaning that there was in the room translated well onto camera. And I think we really succeeded, because for me the real joy of the Broadway show was the precision that we put into the whole show, from the lighting to Annie B's wonderful choreography to the music to the sound. Everything was so dialed in a way that we couldn't do it on the road. And to be able to take that precision and that meaning that was in every moment of everybody's work and attach it to the film, I think we were really successful in that.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, Pete, for you, between Broadway and the performances that were shot, did you have to change what you did at all?
No, not. I mean, as far as the live mixing element goes, no. I was also the recordist for the whole thing, so that involved a little bit more than I would normally do on the Broadway show. But no, the work that came for me was definitely after the fact, in the post world, and that was a time intensive but very exciting process.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, David, there are certainly more ways than just that line about "thank you for leaving your home" that make this feel very timely. I mean, it's crazy. The song that you chose from Janelle Monáe was she did that years ago, but it couldn't be more timely than 2020. But did you find the show itself? Did you change things about the show for the filming?
For the filming, well, Spike added kind of family members in that particular song. If you remember, he added family members holding pictures of their loved ones or their husbands or wives or children who had been murdered. He added that intercut with our performance, which it was already a powerful song, and now it's just like completely devastating with that addition. And Spike added the parade through the audience at the end, which we didn't do that. We thought of it, but then we thought, oh, what if somebody stumbles on the stairs getting down and that kind of thing. So, but with the magic of movies, you can kind of, boom, there we are.
Yeah.
I remember that moment where it was not going to happen, and at the very last minute, oh, we're gonna do it. And
yes,
I got to watch the entire band parade right around behind me as I'm mixing the show, which was actually like one of my favorite moments.
So did you rehearse that at previous shows before you did it for the filming?
No, I think that was it.
No.
I think we just did it.
We just did it. And so we had to grab cameras. I think I grabbed a GoPro and we grabbed the camera, and I had one of the operators just walking back. I ran up the stairs. I was like, oh my God. But that was kind of a typical Spike thing of, let's throw it in the ring and put everything, in it and just challenge everybody to see how it would work. And it ended up being so much fun. Everybody just laughed all the way through the whole thing. It was so great. And it was great because the audience felt like they were a part of it too. They had no idea that you were going to come into the audience.
Right. Well, now with the movie out and you're going back to Broadway, right? So
yes,
everybody in the audience now is going to expect you to come down to the audience at the end of the show.
Oh, well, I don't know if we can do that given the COVID and everything. We're kind of being safe.
Yeah, right. So did they clean the floor of the theater extra that night, since you guys were mostly barefoot walking through the audience?
You know, I didn't even think about that. No, when we were on concert tour, we performed on some pretty funky stages. Uh, but yeah, our feet survived.
Right. I mean, when I saw it, it felt to me like, you know, in certain ways it was a show about home in both the small and large senses of that word, and about personal connections and thing. I mean, has your idea of what this show is and what you want to express changed since you first took it on the road?
No, it's actually gotten stronger. This whole idea of community and kind of social issues and all the things that we deal with. It's, if anything, it's more relevant now than when we were doing the show. All those things, you know, the curtain has been parted, and all those issues have been really come to the surface during the pandemic. And well, luckily we kind of address a lot of that stuff. And so there may be some little kind of tweaks in the text that I deliver, but a lot of it is there. Those are the things that we're thinking about now.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I suppose, you know, the stuff about how crucial immigrants are to the show, and by extension to the country. Just because Trump's out of office doesn't mean that's not still a significant issue.
Yeah, the things that we deal with have not suddenly been solved instantly. You know, these are going to be with us for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is part of sort of an overarching enterprise of yours called Reasons to Be Cheerful.
Well, you could say that. It might be a little stretch to say the show is part of that, but yeah, there's. I do have this. I guess it's called a solutions journalism project, where we me and the editors and some writers we seek out people and places and initiatives that have solved problems, and then we post it in a kind of news magazine.
Mm-hmm. Right. So is it harder to find reasons to be cheerful these days?
Actually, no. There's a lot going on in the world that the bias is in the world and in ourselves is towards negative news. We're kind of drawn towards negative news. That's just part of who we are. We want to be aware of danger and bad stuff coming our way. But there's actually a lot of people who are doing incredible things around the world, and but it tends to get overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Well, let me go back to Pete and Brian and Rob, since you were involved in this show from the early stages. I mean, can you remember your earliest conversations with David about it, and you know, whether the stuff you talked about in those early conversations is what you ended up doing?
My first conversation with David about it was the first time that David and I met. I went to his office on Broadway and Lower Broadway, and we talked about the show, and a lot of it was already set. There were three-sided walls, so you couldn't see any backstage, you couldn't see any detritus of crew or any of the mechanics of the show. The band being mobile, the stage being clear, that was already very well defined by the time David and I met. So it was it felt like a great opportunity. It also felt very scary to be offered this blank canvas with no obstacles and no constraints. And then I think the conversation then sort of turned to how to solve some technical problems, how to see people, and how to use this opportunity as a way of producing a concert tour that was unlike anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's continued. You know, a lot of the ideas that we talked about in that first meeting are in the show today.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, Pete, for you, did you start off talking about the stuff that we now hear?
Well, I'd worked with David on the Love This Giant tour with St. Vincent. So the wireless thing had been we'd done a little bit of it before, and David will probably, this will be the first time he's heard this, but when he asked me about doing this, I said, yes, we can do that. Not entirely knowing that that was the case. I knew if there was a way, we would figure it out. And between myself and a guy named John Chadwick, who was our other audio engineer on the tour, we did figure it out. And luckily, the technology was had been recently put in place to allow us to do that many musicians completely wireless and with very, very good sound quality. I mean, everything you hear on the movie is being recorded through those wireless mics, which is pretty impressive, given how it all came out. But the initial conversations, I honestly didn't know what to make of what this show was going to be. And it took me probably several months of being on tour for it kind of to appear. I have to say, I'm not a very visually oriented person. The movie actually allowed me to see some things in the show that I'd never seen before. When I actually got to sit down and watch it, or while I was working on it, I was like, I never knew that was happening, because I tend to keep my head buried. Keeps me from being distracted if I just listen and don't watch as much. The thing that I really came to find was that the color in the show really comes from the lighting and the music, given the gray of the stage floor and the sort of silver gray of the chainmail around the stage. And it really does put the focus on the music and on the people. And that was unlike anything I had ever worked with before. And it was just such a cool revelation, you know?
Yeah. Well, David, did the movie show you things about the show that you didn't know about? I mean, obviously you're pretty busy when you're up there on stage. Did you see details from your supporting cast that you hadn't seen?
I absolutely did. I mean, I was aware when Annie B was making the choreography and the movement when we were in rehearsals, which would have been like a year and a half before this. I was aware of what I would see, what people were doing. Then during the touring and performing, I completely forgot about it. My back was turned to them half the time, or I'm moving backwards, or I'm moving sideways. I'm not aware of what everybody's doing. And suddenly I'm watching the movie and I'm going, look at all that stuff that's going on back there. Look what they're doing back there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what was the feeling like at the end of that first night when you went in the audience and you're backstage? I assume you didn't really then all hop on bikes and ride through the town for Spike's cameras, but I mean, was there a particularly joyful feeling that night after that performance?
Yeah, I forget what night it was. It might have been the second night. I'm not sure. One of the nights, it was the audience just really kind of gave it back to us. It was an extraordinary audience, and we were all ecstatic. And so what you see, yeah, we're all jumping up and down and slapping ourselves on the back. We felt great about the show. And yes, I did get on my bike and ride home after that, but the others did not. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Ellen, I talked to Fran Lebowitz not long ago, and she talked about how you made her do things over and over and over again when filming Pretend It's a City. She said she made me walk across 42nd Street, so many times on time. So when you do this and you've only got three passes at it, did you walk away thinking, oh, I wish I could get him to do X, Y, or Z again?
Well, that's part of the excitement of doing a live show. And if you've ever seen Fran walk across the street, I think you would ask her to do it many times too. Especially when she's flipping people off when they almost hit her with bicycles. Can we do that again? That was a great moment, Fran. So, yeah, I know that, I mean, that's part of the excitement of a live show is that, you want to capture that. And it's there's an exhilaration, there's an adrenaline when you go through the show with the performers, you know, of trying to get those moments. And sometimes you miss moments, but you know, there's so many things going on. We had 11 cameras the first night, so it was almost like I'm trying to get it as much as I can, and knowing that the second night I can try and pick it up. But the defining moment for me was when we were shooting the bicycle, the credit sequence with the bicycles. We were using GoPros. And I said to Kerwin, who was helping with the GoPros, I said, Kerwin, I said, give me a GoPro because I'm going to be in the car with Spike and I want to handhold one, you know, alongside of everyone. So he says, do you want the hand grip? And I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Now the GoPro is this big and I'm used to using a camera that big. So I go, that's fine. Let's go. So we roll down the window and we start to go and Spike goes, and action. And the car starts to go, and I drop the GoPro. And Spike's like, cut. He's like, Ellen. He goes, how can you drop the camera? I'm like, Spike, it's this big. So I got out, picked up the camera, got back in the car, we started again. Everybody had to back up.
Right. So now, David, there are plans to bring this back to Broadway soon?
Yeah, we're hoping for mid-September. September 17th is the date we're shooting for. Of course, that's all Delta permitting. Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing show. I mean, I've been seeing your shows for a long time, going back to, you know, the tour that was filmed for Stop Making Sense. But this is really a remarkable show and a remarkable film. So thank you for coming here to talk about it. For everybody in the audience, thank you for joining us. It was great to have you all. You can also take advantage of our free trial to TheWrap Pro and be the first to know about upcoming screenings and events, or you can register for upcoming screenings, catch up on past screenings, and more by visiting TheWrap.com and going to the screenings tab. So everybody, thanks very much, and you know, congratulations on the Emmy nominations, and best of luck going back to Broadway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.